I've been sitting on this project for a while. I built this knight a long time ago, a couple of months ago. I magnetized the whole thing except for the torso, as you can see. But the guns, all the gun options, the missile pod, all of it is very neatly magnetized. It snaps into place very nicely. But honestly, building this whole thing just took hours of work and many days. So I feel like after I finished, I just needed some time to process just the whole thing of building it. I even haven't taken out the rest of the armor plates, as you can see, but I felt like it was time to paint this guy up. I really wanted to have a model, a knight of my own for the longest time, and now that I finally got it, I think it's time. So I really wanted to make a color scheme that mixed both Black Templars and Imperial Fists. Specifically Black Templars, but kind of resembling the origins of the Templars chapter, since they are successor chapters of the Imperial Fist. So I wanted something that mixed both black, yellow, and white. But it was tricky because I just searched for many places online. I mean, I Googled it basically, and I just couldn't find a scheme that I really liked, or a way of, how to put the colors in the right places. I think I just couldn't find a good reference until I found this model, which I'm going to link in the description, because I really love the way he distributed all the three colors, but I knew that I also wanted to make some changes to make it more of my own. So I started snapping things out of the sprues with my very nice AliExpress $10 snapping tool, the snipper. And I just had to, take all of the armor plates that I haven't taken out till now. Once that was done, it was finally time to start painting. I was a bit nervous before starting this because it's a big model and it's going to take quite a lot of time to get it right, but I was really eager to have it finished. But first I had to mask all of the magnets that were in place just to prevent paint to getting in when I prime and airbrush the whole thing. I used this blue tack that I got from AliExpress too, very cheap, but it works really well. So after all the important parts were masked, I started to prime. I loaded up my airbrush with Avalon Black Air, and I started spraying it on all the parts of the model that needed. So the legs, the torso, the carapace, and all the weapon options. My idea was to cover it all black and then use dry brushing with silver to make a metallic effect while keeping some shadows and recesses, so I didn't really have to do much afterwards. Now, I did run into some problems because I either diluted the paint too much, or I should have used a proper primer, because I feel like I had to use too many layers to get it right, to get the opacity that I wanted, and to cover every nook and cranny, because it was really important for me that every single part was completely black. But at the end, it worked out fine. I just had to have a little bit of patience and use a few more coats of the black, and it didn't really affect the end result. It worked pretty well. And after everything was prime black, it was time to start dry brushing. So I loaded up my brush with silver and scraped up most of the paint with a paper towel, and then started to gently pass the brush over all the edges of the model so it would catch up the paint while leaving all the recesses and deep spots untouched. This is a great technique either for beginners or even pro painters, because it's a really quick and easy way to get really nice details on your surfaces, but I think it works even better on big models, especially vehicles and knights, because it helps you to cover really big surfaces very quickly and without too much hassle. So it's quick, it's easy, and it works pretty well. So I f***ed up and I forgot to record footage of all the parts that needed dry brushing just finished and kind of displayed them. So I'll just have to jump to the next part, which is the armor plates. Yay! Now for all the armor plates, I'll be using a Vallejo primer, a gray primer. Now I love to use gray when I'm gonna paint over it with different colors, because gray is such a neutral tone that any color that you put on top of it will reach its full opacity very quickly and without any trouble. If you use black, some colors that are too light will need loads of coats or layers to reach the tone that you want, the opacity that you need, where gray just allows you to forget about it and to just put any color on top of it that you want, and it will work super well. Now that I have all the armor pieces primed, it's time to start putting some paint on top of them. And I decided to start with the pauldrons, specifically the right one. I wanted to make a checkered pattern with black and yellow to kind of mix together the Black Templar and Imperial Fist aspect of my knight, and also because it's very evocative of Old Warhammer, at least to me. And I haven't really done a checkered pattern before, so this will be something new to me, but also something new to learn, so I'm excited. Once the yellow looked how I wanted to, I started to cut some masking on my desk. First, I slide some horizontal lines just freehand to get them a little uneven, and then I used a ruler to make the vertical cuts. This took me a little bit because I want them to look at least good for when they will have to be, and then I started to put them by hand on top of the pauldron. But this was really tricky, and I even scraped a little bit of the paint with my nails, so it took a while to get it right. But after some work, it was done, and it looked pretty nice. So it was time to load up my airbrush again with some Abaddon black and start filling those squares with black, and hope for the best. After the paint dried up, I started to peel off all the mask of the pauldron to see the end result of all the masking and spraying, and it turned out pretty well. I was very happy with how the pattern turned out, but I still had to make a few minor fixes. So I took up my brush and I started to polish the edges of the squares. After that, I hit the top of the pauldron with a little bit of white just to have a bit of zenithal lighting so the pattern wouldn't look as flat, but just a little bit. Then I painted the other half of the pauldron fully white to have a really nice contrast with how busy the pattern will look on the pauldron. The paint wasn't even dry because I was dying to see how this would look, and peeling this off was just so satisfying, and just look at the result.
Nice.
After that, I started to paint the left pauldron, the first half with full black, and since I poured way too much black paint on my airbrush, I decided to paint all the other parts of the armor that needed black right away, just so I wouldn't waste any paint. After that, I started to work on the carapace, and I wanted to add some highlights to the black parts, so I used this really nice navy blue that has a little bit of an olive tint to it, very subtle, but this added a really nice transition between the darkest part and the parts where the light would hit the most. After that, I masked the black parts of the carapace and I started to hit the center with white, while also trying to create a gradient from the top spot of the carapace to the edges of it. So you have this really nice gradient that goes from full white to a bit of a grayish tone. Then, just like when I was painting black with my airbrush, I used way too much paint on the brush itself, so I decided to paint the rest of the armor that didn't white right away. After all the white armor was done, I unmasked all the pieces to check if there was any spillover paint that needed to be fixed. And yeah, there were a few spots, but nothing that I can't fix with my brush. Once that step was complete, I realized that I wanted to make a second checkered pattern, but this time on one of the knee plates. So I masked it up with squares and then I sprayed it with yellow. Once I took the masking tape, I had to touch up the borders, but it was basically the same process as the first checkered pattern, but this time it was smaller, so easier and quicker. Now it was time to make the emblem that goes on this little shield alongside his face. I knew I wanted to make something with a lot of Black Templar imagery, so I picked up my Black Templars transfer sheet, cut out this big white Templar cross, and then I proceeded to dip it in water for a few minutes. Once it was ready, I grabbed my tweezers on my brush and proceeded to place it right in the middle, but I also had to tinker with it with my brush until it was in just the right spot. Once the decal was dry, I applied a thin layer of mud varnish to secure the decal in place, so then I could put more decals on top of it without any problems. I then placed this tiny skull with a little Imperial Fist symbol on its forehead that just worked perfectly for what I was going for. After that, I started to place some chains, because you can't really have a Black Templar model without some chains on it. Finally, for the cherry on top, a little white Templar sword. And there it is, the emblem done. I am quite happy with how it turned out, and I don't think I could have done it better. After that, I wanted to use more decals, but this time I decided to put them on the left pauldron, since it was very bare. And I chose this Adeptus Mechanicus symbol that had some wings, and in the transfer sheet you had two options, a black and a white version that was divided right in the middle. So I decided to pick the black version on the left side and the white version on the right side. And this way you had a really nice and eye-catching contrast. Once all my decals were in place, I decided it was time to do the trim. I picked up Brass Scorpion, a really nice metallic paint, and with my brush I applied in all the edges of all the armor plates. This took a while, but it was also oddly satisfying. Now it was time to add some red details, so I decided to paint these missiles on the missile pod red. I used 3 tones going from dark to brightest to create a little bit of depth. Then I wanted to do the eyes using the same colors and the same idea, going from the darkest red to the brightest to create a really nice sense of depth. Now, at the end, I did add a little detail that would make the eyes pop a little more, which is to add just tiny dots of white to create a sort of round reflective surface. And look at that, it looks so neat. And now it was finally time to do some shading with Null Oil. I mainly use this to create some recess shading by taking off the excess of the paint from my brush and applying it very gently on the borders and recesses of all the armor plates. This helps to create a really nice shading. And then I applied it very broadly and quickly on all the brass parts, just so all the nook and crannies and the bolts could gain some shading and depth, but also to blend in better with the rest of the paint job. And here you can see the end result, already dried up. It just looks fantastic. I love how neat and clean it looks, and while it doesn't have any scratches that would make it look more grim dark, I do love a neat and clean paint job. Then I continued shading some metal parts and also some recesses that I forgot, but then I realized that I had to glue in some of the other parts of the armor just so I could apply the Null Oil better and without any problems. Once all the armor plates were glued in place, I continued to apply the Null Oil in all the places that needed it. At this point, I thought I was finished and I started to assemble the rest of the knight and glue everything else, but then I realized that I forgot to paint and do some details on the little banner that it has on his chest plate. So I quickly painted up with some flesh tone just so I could then do some freehand. And I decided to make some text, in this case to write Crusade. So I first started with the letter in the middle, the S, and then the E at the end, just so I could get everything lined up perfectly. I proceeded then to write the whole thing by hand, and then with some touch-up, you could see the end result and voila, it's finished. And now, it's finally time to glue everything together and to assemble the rest of the knight. And there you have it, my Crusader Knight finally done. This took forever, but I am super happy and super stoked with the final result. I think he looks super clean. I love how the colors came out, and I'm very happy with how everything just looks so smooth. I know the base is not finished, but I do want to do something with that in the future, but for now I'll call this done. Also, I had to figure out how to record this with my phone while I was still painting on it, so that was a challenge in and of itself, but I had fun with it. I had fun making this video, editing it. I hope you had fun watching it too. So please like, subscribe, all that stuff that you have to ask for at the end of these videos. But anyways, stay tuned. I'll be making more in the future, but this is it for now. Bye-bye.